Welcome everybody to the public hearing for the City of Laurel Master Plan Committee. Appreciate everybody taking the time, and those folks that might be watching on television. If there is a sign-up sheet for anybody that would like to speak at the public hearing today, so please sign up if you'd like to speak, and we'll get to that section a little bit later. To begin with, I'd like to thank the committee. We've been meeting for about 6 months, I think it's been, in various sessions. And I'd also want to thank staff. This is a major undertaking we do every 10 years. If you take a look at the state of Maryland, this is being driven by state law, but if you look inside of Prince George County, we have, I don't know, how many municipalities are there inside of the county? There's how many? In Prince George's County? 27 incorporated municipalities inside of there, and there's exactly one municipality that has the ability to do planning and zoning for itself, and it's Laurel. And that's something that I think the city has guarded judiciously over the years and complied with anything we have to comply with in terms of state law. Even around, there's 157 municipalities, I think, around the state, and very few of them have the zoning and planning authority that we enjoy. So this is a very important process. I think this is my third one that I've participated with, so that probably says that ought to be my last one. Somebody else can work on them later. But it's always an interesting project, and I think it gives you a really big good oversight in what's going on in the city and how planning is happening. I'd like to introduce the members of the committee that came together. Richard Armstrong, far over there, and then Mr. Roberts is there. My name's Rick Wilson. Mr. Hayes, Mr. Gilmore. Some folks may remember Chief Gilmore from a few years ago when he was our chief of police. We're honored to have you on the committee, sir. And then Ms. Brown. And we have one other member that's probably on his way up here, Mr. Samuel Epps. And I want to thank them. This is one of these kind of jobs where you got to read a lot and come to a lot of meetings. And if you haven't participated before as a civilian, there's quite a learning curve in this process. And I think we've all enjoyed a lot of give and take in this, asked a lot of questions of staff and everything like that. Before we get started with the staff report and the executive summary presentation, I just want to open it up for anything that any of you guys would want to say to start with. I know you'll have comments later on, but is there anything here at the dais? Okay, well then we'll go get started. Mr. Brock.
There we go. Okay, I'll go briefly over the changes. The Laurel Master Plan was last updated November of 2007, and there was an amended plan adopted September 2009 in order to adopt a water resource element required by the state. So it's been roughly 9 years since the last comprehensive amendment to the master plan. Since that time, between 2000 and 2010, the census of the city population-wise increased from 19,960 persons to 25,115, which is a 5,100 person increase, or 25.8%. At that same period of time, Prince George's County increased by 7.7%. The average number of persons per household in the city went from 2.2 to 2.3, a 6.7% increase. The median family income increased from $58,500 to $73,300, a $14,800 increase, or 25.4%. And the unemployment rate increased from 2.6 to 3.5, while Prince George's County increased from 4.1 to 6.1. In housing, in 2000, the total housing units in the city was 9,548, and in 2010, this increased to 10,919, an additional 1,371 units, or a 14.3% increase. Of that, 291 were single-family detached homes, 420 single-family attached or townhomes, 197 2 to 4 unit plexes. There was a decrease from 5 to 9 dwelling apartment units by 125. In apartment units 10 and greater, there was an increase of 603 units. There was a 22% increase in apartments with 10 or more units and a 10% decrease in apartments with 5 to 9 units. Occupancy in 2000 was 8,998 of the 9,548 units, or a 94% occupancy rate. In 2010, the occupancy rate was 10,498 of the 10,919 units, or a 96% occupancy rate. The city is currently made up of approximately 3,027 acres, or 4.73 square miles. Residential land use comprises 30%, commercial, which includes retail, office, and service delivery, is 14%. Public and institutional land uses, which includes active and passive city parks, open space, churches, schools, public and quasi-public uses, total 20% of the city. Mixed-use transportation, or MXT, is 2.9%. The industrial uses are 5%. Vacant land is only 2.7%, with the remaining 490 acres, which is 16%, in streets and public right-of-ways. Maryland statute requires that a municipal corporation include within its plan future municipal growth areas outside of the existing corporate limits. That is the map to your far right. If you would go to the third map, please. This identifies the areas that are contiguous to the city that would be considered within the next planning period for annexation. This does not mean that the property will be annexed, but it provides the opportunity for those that live in those areas to approach the city should they want to be annexed. The state statute also requires that a financial analysis be done to show the financial impact of the annexed areas. This was done by Valbridge Properties Advisors, and it was their conclusion based on the available data that the proposed annexation overall are all modest, more than break even, and that there is an upside potential in the annexation as specific properties are redeveloped with higher value uses, which means that if all of those properties or any of those properties are brought in, that the public services that would be required would be equivalent to or slightly less than the amount of tax revenue that would be generated by those properties. Now to the goals, objectives, and policies, which is really the meat of the master plan. And I'm just going to go over the new goals, objectives, and policies. And the first of those is land use. And the first of these is collaborate with adjacent jurisdictions to ensure coordinated land use patterns, connected transportation networks, and continuous environmental networks in particular during the preparation of master, sector, and functional plans. And the importance of this is transportation. As you may or may not know, when a jurisdiction does a development and requires that a traffic study be done, they stop at the boundary of the county or the city. And that's what happened with the train station. They stopped at the river and didn't consider the impact on Main Street, US 1, and so forth. Historic preservation. Undertake a historic structure survey and analysis to document historical significant properties located outside historic districts that warrant consideration for preservation, which reflects elements of cultural, social, economic, political, or architectural history of the city. What this permits is that the HDC would be able to look at properties that are currently not within a historic district and include those in order to protect the contributing structures, and continue to provide incentives to encourage the preservation and or adaptive reuse of historic resources. And this, of course, are tax credits for improvements to historic structures. The housing element objective: encourage affordable and accessible housing opportunities for all residents, including families, the elderly, physically handicapped, and the economic disadvantaged. And this furthers the city's affordable housing program, providing new developments, providing workforce and affordable housing. Under community facilities, the new objective is support local arts and entertainment, as well as future arts and entertainment districts to foster interaction among artists and artist-related business opportunities. Continue to support local artists and art organizations and attract new artists through incentives such as live work, affordable housing. Increase opportunities for artists to participate in the delivery of public services, the planning and design of capital improvements, and in the design and delivery of information. As you know, the C Street Flats was built with live work in mind, and the artist there is on the first floor a coffee house that's being constructed that also has a performance stage, and artists will be able to display their artwork on a monthly basis. Water resources. The city will cooperate with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, Maryland Department of the Environment to remove fallen trees that obstruct the free flow of water in the Patuxent River watershed adjacent to the city municipal boundary, as well as necessary downstream to locate flooding, erosion, and provide for the healthy river ecosystem. I think that one's pretty self-evident. Continue to fully engage with the Washington Suburban Sanitation Commission to ensure cooperation in planning for water release from the T. Howard Duckett Dam to minimize flooding during storm, provide adequate water supply for citizens, and also to ensure a healthy ecosystem throughout the watershed. And under transportation, support the implementation of the transportation-oriented development through effective partnerships with the state agency, local jurisdictions, and private sectors. And the train station, the MART train station down on Main Street in US 1 North is a state designated TOD. Continue to support the development of the Laurel train station, a state designated TOD, into a mixed use transit oriented development to include multifamily residential, retail, commercial, professional business offices, and structured parking. Continue to be strong and vocal advocates for the retention of the existing full MART service level at the existing Laurel train station. Increase transit ridership to support transit networking efficiencies and reducing traffic congestion, and support the use of transportation alternates, including transit accessibility by bicycles and pedestrians. That concludes the new goals, objectives, and policies that have been added by the committee. If you'd go back to one, please, up arrow. The only change to the future land use map or the comprehensive map is in the upper left. It was the corridor center. It is an antiquated plan unit development. It's recommended that that be MXT, since it is contiguous to 198 and 95. And then on the following map is the transit MXT map. It's the same area, indicating that acreage should be MXT in the future. And that concludes the presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brock. Let me just add a couple of things just from a layperson's point of view. As the committee here started looking at this, a comprehensive plan is a statement of of aspirations as much as it is a statement of what we're going to do with various maps and things like that. And one of the things that I think drove me early, and I think some of my colleagues here, was the growth that we're going to see in the city. So if you just look at the pipeline that we have currently underway, this is the marketplace has started development moving. If you look at the new shopping center, those are coming up out of the ground now. The new apartments there, various apartment buildings coming in, some single family stuff coming in up by off of Conti Road up that way. So if you just look at that, we're looking to see the number of housing units in the pipeline of over 3,000. And that's what that's going to do is going to change a little bit the way we perceive the city. Most of those are going to be multifamily, and we're going to have the population growth that comes with that. If you just look at what's in the pipeline now, that's about 7,400 more people if you use the rules of thumbs that we use for that. And the amount of multifamily as compared to single family is going to switch. And that's just a statement of fact, statement of where the marketplace is going. Laurel being in the center between Washington and Baltimore, the marketplace is responding with multifamily. And, that's just a statement of what it is. But that also drives transportation needs. It drives, the various amenities and things that you put into the map. Kind of the other big thing I think that this committee added to the plan this year was this notion, and Mr. Brock went over many of them, of coordination. We're really advocating that the city does what it can to advocate at the state level for regional planning, especially when it comes to transportation. We saw that with the train station. Howard County was doing traffic studies that stopped at the border. So I think that kind of cooperation, anything we can do to encourage that, hopefully to get that into state law. I don't know if that bill actually passed. There was a bill for regional planning.
There was a proposed bill. I don't know.
I don't know if it ever came out of committee. I don't know if anybody here follows it, but it's one of those things where I think the city is right to pursue cooperation with WSSC as it comes to the river valley and flood protection. We all saw the new flood maps come out. I think that was another area here. So transportation, regional planning, prepare for the growth that we've already got in the pipeline, and then establish ourselves with the right mix of property designations to foster that kind of investment. I mean, the way I look at it is we're in the marketplace as a city in the same way as everyone else. If we discourage capital investment into the city because of something in our land use or our comprehensive plan, that investment's going to go elsewhere. So we got to do that in a smart way. This is the opportunity for citizens like us to help shape that and move it forward. So that's kind of my overview. Does anybody else want to add anything or any questions of Mr. Brock? Okay. With that, I'd like to open it up for do we have a list? We have one person signed up to speak, Ms. Lubinecki. Come on up and give us your name and address for the record. Make sure you're on. I think you're on.
No, it's on.
Yep.
Karen Lubinecki at 421 Prince George Street. And first of all, I want to thank the committee for what's clearly been an enormous amount of work. I mean, I actually read the whole thing because I think it's important to do. Yeah. No, I have a life. Fortunately, I read fast. And there's a couple of comments I'd like to make, and then I do have a couple of questions, if that's acceptable to the committee. One of the questions I have is you all have mentioned that you've been discussing this for the last 6 months, and yet today is the first day, and I think the only day, that is really a public opportunity to discuss that. Have you had hearings at other times?
All of those meetings have been public and advertised and on the banner, and we've had some members of the public
Well,
show
then I
up.
withdraw my question on that. But I did want to say a couple things. I was very happy to see that you've talked about expanding the HTC purveyance over some of the other structures, because I know that's been something that's been on the plate for many people, and I know Jim McSaney would be very happy to see that that's become a goal. And the idea that we support the station is obviously very important. I was a little concerned when I read through this that there was very, very little discussion, it seemed to me, even though you mentioned it literally on page 175, don't worry, I did my comments, my pages,
That's great.
of the Howard County Route 1 redevelopment and the amount of redevelopment that's happening right north of us. We talked a lot about Columbia as being the driving force, but not about what's really happening right north of us at Laurel Station and actually on the Anne Arundel side, the amount that people who own that area are proposing to build, plus the fact that for Howard County, this has become a huge revitalization priority for them. And I was a little concerned, and maybe one of you could talk about this, didn't seem to be a discussion of the impact that their drive to add housing, retail, and other things that literally will compete with Laurel into the discussion. So I was a little bit.
We certainly discussed that. If you want to give your comments to Ms. Green, we can certainly strengthen that. I have no problem. I mean, it was discussed at length. We probably just didn't get the words in good enough. So I think you make an absolutely fantastic point. Part of the whole idea of regional planning was driven by the Howard County, at least part of it, in Anne Arundel County development that's going on, also in the workplace development that's going on
Right,
in
and
Anne
there's a
Arundel
lot
County.
going on right north of us, and it seemed to me it was more than
North and
Columbia.
east, and we certainly should strengthen that. So if you give your comments to Ms. Green afterwards, or send her an email if you want.
An email with actual language or something, or
Sure.
just some of the points. I mean, that's
We
essentially.
love red line in and out.
Okay. I mean, I have some basic typos, but I thought I'd just send them to Jack. A couple
Yep.
things
Please.
Sentences that didn't work or something. And the other area of concern I had that was, well, actually, there's two more. One was, while we talked about hiking and biking a little bit, and trails, and talking about encouraging developers, I noticed on page 58, it says vehicular biking and hiking linkages to community facilities should be recommended in the review of development proposals, but that seems like a weak word as opposed to required. And I wondered if there was something in that. And then number 10 said support the use of transport. This is part of your new goal, which is, I think, is a great goal, to support the use of transportation alternatives, including transit accessibility by bicycles and pedestrians, but there didn't seem to be any specific recommendations of activities that would back that up. In other words, there was no plan to, build a new path here except for the Van Dusen one, so no specifics on how you might do that. And since I like.
No, it's a good point. I don't know.
I like the bicycle, and so I kind of noticed the absence. And the reason I mention that is that I know that the new, I don't even know what they call it, the new one on Gunpowder Road, that's the whole new developments over there with the Conterra stuff that's been done. They have built a bike path basically almost from the beginning of Gunpowder all the ways down to there. And there seems to be no discussion of how we can kind of coordinate our trails so that we can link up with some of these really terrific trails and make it part of the transportation part of Laurel, which makes it so somebody can actually bicycle somewhere or hike, but also to make us part of the recreational, much more of the part of the recreational community.
It may, I don't know, we talked about that. I don't know if it got into the recreation part, but the idea of connected paths. But please send us language. I think we can certainly emphasize that. It's a great note.
Okay. What are your deadlines here?
We have 60 days.
You got 60 days.
So I don't have to do this tomorrow.
No, of course not.
Well, of course you do.
Well, the person who worked in PR and stuff over her life knows that things have deadlines.
This is government.
Okay, and the third thing was actually relating to page 93, talking about getting, this is in the historic district area, and promoting it. We now have an arts district, which I think is fabulous, and that we've included increasing support for that is really important. And I think Ada and the other people are doing a great job in kind of promoting the arts in Laurel. We're now, I think, more part of the Anacostia Heritage Trail. Mr. Mayor, I think we resolved that so that we're actually now full member, I think, of that. We're a member, I'm not sure what.
Well,
That was it.
their
But on the
plan,
businesses, so
Wait 1 second.
their plan is being included by reference.
by reference to it, so, but also in taking advantage of that, you need to be a member of it, as I know it's a little, anyway. But what I saw was a discussion of the arts and kind of a discussion of business over here and a discussion of the history over here, but no real discussion of how these jointly should be working together to promote that whole section of the country,
Of the community.
Particularly
I don't think that was intentional. If you have a way that you can think of a place.
because you basically have three great pieces here, but,
Um,
and maybe that's.
We're following kind of the template,
I
so,
know, I could tell this was an update from.
yeah. So if you got a note for that, or we'll just see if we can find a place, but that's a great note. And any place that those can be integrated, we would be happy to do it. I'm trying to figure out a place where you could put such a statement, maybe up front.
Maybe, and then we talk about, there's no Main Street liaison or Main Street manager or anything. I know that's been a controversial.
Well, this isn't really the document for that.
Well, I mean, in terms of how to promote, because it talks specifically about doing something with the support only of the Board of Trade. I think it's if you look at page 93, I actually printed out my pages that I was referencing here, so.
93.
93, hold on a second. Under recommendations, where was that? Oh, it's on page 93, paragraph 2, last line.
93.
It says the one that starts a specific problem.
I don't know,
It
this
says
must
any
be
such effort would be-
repaginated in
It
mine.
says any such effort would need the support of the Laurel Board of Trade and its collective membership. But that seemed, it's page 93 in my
Yeah,
copy.
I've got a different page number. Okay,
It's right, if you have historic districts, it's right, it's
right above historic districts?
1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs above the heading historic districts. The paragraph starts a specific problem. And it basically talks about this, the need for a unified effort.
Yep.
Which coordinated effort could potentially improve. But my concern there is that we're only talking about support from the Laurel Board of Trade, which is an important component, but I don't see any push for the city to be part of that support team.
Well, this is the city saying that.
Right,
Okay.
but no, but the effort needs the.
I don't think we meant to leave that out. We'll be happy to, again.
I don't know how, that's when I think you should figure out the language, how you'd like to word that. But it just seemed to me that we need to make it clear that this is
In cooperation with the city.
maybe.
If you end that sentence, in cooperation with the city. I mean, I think in Mr. Brock's actual department, he's got those other responsibilities as well. Does that make sense, Mr. Brock?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. And the rest of the things were actually little nits that don't even require conversation.
I'm an engineer. I don't see those. I'm
You
glad
never
somebody
see the
does.
nits? Well, the one I would like to bring to your attention, however, is the one on page 60, which talks about our senior centers changing contagious to perhaps the word contiguous.
Oh, okay. Well, it could have been meant either way. Spell check worked.
No, spell check didn't work, and that was the problem.
No, contagious
Yeah,
was
word.
spelled properly.
But I think you meant contiguous.
I'm sure that's what happened.
Okay,
Thank you. Is there anything else? Any questions?
No, I mean, I think that was.
We don't have any, does anybody have any objection to any of those notes? I think they're all, we had those discussions. It's just a failure in trying to convert, listening to us talk and these guys have to convert it to
Right,
prose.
I think it was a lot of work, and I know that you all have put in a lot of time.
Well,
and
we
you-
appreciate you reading it. Thank you, Karen.
Okay.
Thank you
you,
so
Karen.
much. I don't have anybody else signed up to speak. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I do want to take the opportunity to thank you all for the hard work that you've done. I think I came to your first meeting and I said I'd see you later on. So you've been doing all the work, and I think there's a process, and I know Ms. Lubinecki had brought up about hearings and other things, and I want to, hopefully before you adjourn, you'll talk about the process. This is just, again, one of the processes that is in a long, I'd say at least another couple of months. This has to go to the Planning Commission for input and has to go back to Mayor and City Council, who will have public hearings as well. But I'm glad you all had a public hearing. I wanted to publicly thank you for all your hard work and dedication. This is not an easy task, and acknowledge the staff that work with you. I think, again, I've been through a couple of these. They're very time consuming. It's a lot of reading, and it's really you all getting out there talking to the general public to find out, where the public wants to go, the blueprint for the city of Laurel, and it's a check and balance, and I think it works well for us. And again, I just want to thank you and acknowledge that. I did want to point out just a couple of things. I think I can read this. I don't have my glasses, but I was approached about a week or so ago. I talked to Mr. Brock briefly, but I think on the micro housing, was approached from a developer, asked if we were interested in that. I know that I've seen some things on different shows about it. I'm not sure I'm into that. But there is, did ask Jack to kind of maybe see what was out there. I'd like to mention to you all and see maybe you would at least discuss it, talk about it, see if there's something that may fit into the overall plan of the city, and just get some feedback. I think it was important they called me, so I at least said, I would pass it your way and ask for some information. I did want to point out as well, because the city does, in fact, the city was one of the very first that had the bike master plan, and that's a separate document, and I encourage anybody that may be listening or in the audience that wants to get a copy of that. It's very good. It talks about linking up other areas. I just recently had a meeting a couple weeks ago with County Executive Shu in Anne Arundel County. We talked about just those very things. It's difficult sometimes when you each have pieces of property that will get you close, and then there's one that wants a couple $1 million for put a bike path through. So it's difficult, but again, the most important part of this is that we are talking. When this is all said and done, we will deliver these plans to our neighboring jurisdictions, just like we get their plans as well. But the most important thing is all of us coming together and to communicate, and we do that. And I apologize if this was brought up, but you all know, and I said this at your first meeting, I want to make sure that we reference Laurel Regional Hospital, or make sure that the needs of the community are met when we talk about emergency care, those types of things. And I'm pretty sure it's in there, but I may have been
It is in
checking
there,
some
Mr. Mayor.
emails.
We did get that. We did get that in there.
But we're still talking like we were talking when I first met with you. We're not done. We're close, but I'm hopeful in the next several, at least 30 days, we may have an announcement for everybody. So I again encourage you to take a look at that, strengthen it any way you can. And then the last piece was, again, when we talk about McCullough Field, has a lot of interest in doing some things. I'd encourage you to make sure you're taking a look at the recreational needs to make sure that all recreational needs are met. And I think you're doing that with the staff and with what I've heard you've been doing. So, but again, I just wanted to reiterate that and ask you to take a look at that before the final document. So again, thank you all very much, and appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We will certainly take that into advisement. I think you had a good suggestion there. Mr. Brock, if you could outline the next set of steps. We went over this, I think, at our last meeting, kind of what's the process from here?
Okay, the next step is this is forwarded to the Planning Commission. We have sent out the document that's before you to the contiguous counties for comments, and also for state agency comments. They have 60 days to report back with whatever input they want to have or comments. We prepare a report of those comments, and that's forwarded with the plan to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission will hold a public hearing, and then after the public hearing, they will make a recommendation to forward the plan to the mayor and city council. The mayor and city council will adopt it as an ordinance, which will require 2 public hearings. And that will occur in maybe July or August,
Yeah, at the earliest.
depending on the comments that were received back. And then after the second public hearing, the mayor and city council can adopt.
And like you mentioned in your opening comments, there's other opportunities to open this up if we want to make amendment to it to sometime in the future. So it just because the mayor and city council adopts it as is, there certainly could be.
Oh, it can be adopted at any time. It's just a state law. It was initially every 5 years you had to amend and look at your plan and do a evaluation, review, and amendments. They changed it to 7 years, and then they changed it to 10 years. So we've just completed our 9th year, so this plays well into the 10-year cycle.
And Subregion 1 master plan will be coming up here pretty quick, right? We get a.
Yes.
So that's the county version of this that then we interact with, and lots of other opportunities to do some more of the original stuff like I think we all want to spearhead. The other thing that I think would be important for the public to help with is, any inputs. Jack, if you could give, is there a department-wide email that they could send comments to?
Yeah, they can be sent to, we have two, pnz@laurel.md.us or cpbs@laurel.md.us. And those are also available on our website. If you went to the planning page, they'll be at the top of it.
So this document, as we have it tonight, is available on the city website.
It is there
And
now.
It's up. That's what I pulled down this version from. And then there's email there, and we would certainly consider any amendments or changes, or if you're good at spotting typos, we can use that help too. And send those to the department. They'll get them back to us, and we'll take a look at them. We'll probably have one more meeting in this committee when we get the public comments back. Probably be in the June, July timeframe, I assume, before it goes to the planning commission.
Yes.
Okay, great. So that's kind of the process. Do we have anybody else that would like to speak? Nothing from the Fourth Estate? Yeah, we're good. Anything from the panel here?
I'd just like to
Turn your mic on. Yep. There you go.
I'd like to echo your earlier comments about staff doing an outstanding job in preparing the draft and responding to our questions in a very timely fashion. And Mayor, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to work with this group and review the master plan.
Thank you, Mr. Gilmore. Anything else, folks? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.